Hi, and welcome to the daily recap of the last day at IBVC. I'm your host, Jonathan, and with me today are
Sahasrabuddhe from NCI US.
Kimon from Greece.
well, it's been an unbelievable conference and so much learning, so much energy, so much spirit. Tell me, how was the conference for you, being back together finally in DC?
It was one of the best and most awaited meetings after almost 4 years of not being in face-to-face contact with people. This was a great opportunity to connect with everybody and meet colleagues, talk science, talk programs, talk what can we do together, what has been working, and really learn from each other. It was a fabulous meeting. It was a well-organized, well-put-together meeting, taking advantage of all the opportunities for so many colleagues to get together.
Vic, I totally agree with Vic. It's been 5 years since we've had our last meeting in person. We've had Zoom meetings the previous 2 years, but this is completely different, of course. We've realized that at this time, we have realized that because in-person meetings tend to be much more interactive and much more, easy to follow up and much more, happy. We're also happy here as well.
So, one of the talk about being happy, I was tremendously happy for being able to talk to people and figure out problems and discuss solutions when you're 1.5 or 2 feet away from the other person rather than in a square window. As you said, the Zoom experience is very different on a 2D screen. The 3D experience was really good.
So jumping more into the experience, today it was the last day, but that didn't mean that, it's the end of, all the learning that's going on. So what kind of, what sessions did you go to today?
So I was chairing a session in the morning on clinical sciences, and one of the themes that really struck in that session was the amount of work that's going on to improve cervical cancer screening and treatment, pre-cancer treatment in many parts of the world where there's low resources, and the amount of energy and the work that has gone on to designing locally appropriate solutions for that, whether those are screening or pre-cancer treatment interventions. And some of the trials that are underway that will eventually yield some results, some of the early results were shown of those trials. They were all very eye-opening and really important to hear. And in addition to that, there was some really good translational data as well in that session, improving targets for pre-cancer treatment, detection, and intervention. And I think the amount of efforts that folks across the range of disciplines are taking, whether it's a basic scientist or a implementation researcher, the entire spectrum of science was really covered by this conference. In that session itself, which was a clinical session, we had really good basic science talks or basic science translational focused talks, but also very implementation oriented talks. So in general, I think it's blurring the lines between these traditional disciplines, and we're trying to work as a community as a whole and learning from each other.
To add to that, what Vic is saying, I closely watched the last session of the meeting, of the day of the meeting too, which was kind of dedicated to research going on in countries mainly in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, we know that about 85% of HPV-related disease comes from low and middle-income countries, and particularly sub-Saharan Africa. So this was very important, and it seems that research has focused on those countries and mainly implementation research, actually, because we need to get going on with eliminating cervical cancer in those areas. Because if we do that, we would be very close to eliminating cervical cancer all over the world.
So the big question is, what do you want to see? IVC is coming November 2024 to Edinburgh. Having seen the data presented and the experiences presented in the sessions today, what do you hope to see ahead of the next conference?
Thank you, Jonathan. We're expecting to see those research collaborations between researchers in Africa, in African countries, and researchers located in the US or the northern or the European area. We expect this research to get going on and to expand so that actually treatment would be there as soon as possible.
I agree completely, Kimon. I think the bigger concern that everybody was facing, which I think was articulated by Dr. Lowy at the end of the day plenary, was how do we get there, and what are some of these targets, and what are the realistic goals we should be setting for, the elimination initiative that has been a main standing common feature all throughout the conference and the message for the last several years. But I think the emphasis on improving the dosing, delivery, and implementation of vaccines and screening in lower and middle income countries, and using some of these locally relevant, locally developed solutions, as well as working collaboratively closely together in these areas, was a message that I think was highlighted quite very efficiently in the plenary, which was sort of summarizing the meeting. But I think it was, as you said, it's the emphasis is on low and middle income countries in sub-Saharan Africa. The amount of work that is underway as a collaboration, I think that needs to really go on very well over the next several years. I think we are on the right track as a community to get there.
I think that's a really positive note, to leave us with, is that, great science has been done, the research has been done, and now it's about action. So to wrap up, give me your final thoughts before you go home.
I'll give the last word to Kimon, but I can tell you it has been fabulous interacting with colleagues from across the world. I was fortunate to be attending the meeting in my local area in Washington, D.C., but it was fabulous to see the energy, commitment, time that my colleagues from around the world spent coming here, spending these 5 days together, discussing our work together, our common appreciation of the problems, but also the common commitment to deliver solutions to those problems. I think that was a really important sort of almost reignited the fire that we were somewhat in a different environment for the last several years during COVID. But I think we are getting there in terms of recognition that we'll all start making really fast strides towards solving this problem. So I'm really glad to have worked this out together in this meeting, and really thank the organizers for putting together such a great show.
Well, I was very excited to come here, and after all those years, I was very excited, and I leave Washington and the conference with optimism, and this is what I didn't expect actually, because as Doug Lowry said, the keynote lecture, we might have the tools to eliminate cervical cancer, but this does not mean that HPV-based research has to stop. So this is the main, take-home message which I take to my home. Thank you.
So the forum was provided, the discussions took place, new connections were made, old friendships reignited. All that's left is for you to keep pushing forward, and we look forward to seeing everything that everyone achieves between now and IPCC 2024 in Edinburgh. We'll see you there.